What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories from different comic book companies. Today, we are going to jump back over to Marvel Comics, and we are going to continue our coverage over Dan Slott's Fantastic Four run, and we're going to pick up with Volume 5. Now, Volume 5 is a very special volume for Dan Slott's run, and the reason why I say that is because it is one of the biggest retcons in the Fantastic Four history, and honestly, I kinda like it a lot, and honestly, I think you guys will too. So with that being said, I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. And if you do, please hit the like button down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. To begin today's video, we actually picked up with the Fantastic Four at the Art and Space Museum. Now, the reason why, because right now you have the Fantastic Four handing over their first spaceship they used to go into space, which actually led to them getting their powers and becoming the Fantastic Four. But either way, we actually see Reed Richards still love his first spaceship because it was the first one he made, and so of course he has a lot of love for that first spaceship. Now his children, Franklin and Valerie, they honestly do not care, but still, it's nice to see Reed still love the first thing he ever made when he met the Fantastic Four group. Now, not everyone is actually happy about seeing the first spaceship the Fantastic Four actually used, and that person is Ben Grimm. And he has a good reason why, because when they got their powers, of course, he was turned into a huge rock monster. But on top of that, he still thinks that he was correct when he told Reed that the shields were not strong enough to protect them from the cosmic rays. But of course, Reed told Ben over and over again that he made sure the shields were strong enough to protect them, but of course, at the end, they still got hit by the cosmic rays and became the Fantastic Four. But for Ben Grimm, he became, of course, the rock monster. Now, while he's looking over the spaceship, he does find out that the black box did survive. And when he pressed that button to play the black box, he hears everything that happened when the cosmic rays hit them and turned them into the Fantastic Four. Now, this is where we get our huge retcon, because while Johnny and Sue are signing a bunch of autographs, that is when they are confronted by two new characters, Sandy and Duke. And Dan Slott apparently tells us that these two characters were supposedly supposed to be on the spaceship with Reed and Ben, not Johnny and Sue. But because Reed was in such a hurry to go into space, of course he took Johnny and Sue to replace Duke and Sandy. And so that is Dan Slott's huge retcon right there. But of course, we move on to the next scene. But after that moment, we actually see that Reed is having a hard time falling asleep. And the reason why? Because he is already thinking about his next adventure with the Fantastic Four. And honestly, this next adventure is going to be one of the biggest retcons in the Fantastic Four history. But of course, Sue cannot wait to see what Reed has in mind. Now, this is where we get a flashback of how Johnny Storm was able to join Reed and Ben on that spaceship, because when we get this flashback, we see a younger Johnny who was barely old enough to be a pilot for the spaceship, but because he begged Ben Grimm so much over and over again, Ben Grimm said, fine, if you want to be my backup pilot for the spaceship, you have to be trained. And so in this flashback, we actually watch Johnny go through the different training sessions to prove to Ben Grimm that he'll be a great backup pilot for that spaceship. And honestly, I kind of like this because it shows that Johnny Storm really wanted to go into space. He saw something out there and he just had to go out into space. And that is why he worked so hard through those different training sessions to prove to Ben Grimm that he'll be a great backup pilot. And of course, he did do that. He achieved his goal. He became a backup pilot for Ben Grimm. And this leads into another thing I like what Dan Slott is doing with Johnny Storm's character that we have not really seen in a long time, which is that Johnny Storm is great with his hands when it comes to being a mechanic. And the reason why I say that because when Alicia Master wakes up and she realized her room got smaller because Reed needed more space for what he is working on, well, that is when Johnny asks Reed, can he help Reed complete what he is working on? And of course, we do get a page where we see Reed and Johnny just working together and recreating something that we have not seen in a very, very long time. And so I like this because it's Johnny Storm being a mechanic. And honestly, the last few books I read for Johnny Storm, we have not really seen that in him. We have not seen a Johnny Storm who's really being a mechanic and working alongside with Reed. But with this book right here, it's nice to see that again. But it does not take us long to see what was Reed and Johnny working on in Reed Lab. And that is when we come to find out that Reed and Johnny had recreated their first spaceship or a new version of it as a way for them to complete their first mission, which was to travel to a certain planet that was far, far away. And so you have Reed and Johnny show everyone that they have recreated a new version of their first spaceship. Now, of course, Ben Grimm is not happy about this because the last time they went into space with the first version of that spaceship, they all became the Fantastic Four and Ben became a huge rock monster. So he leaves angry about the idea that Reed and Johnny had recreated a new version of their first spaceship. Now, this actually leads into a funny moment because you do have Ben Grimm complaining to Alicia Masters about what Reed and Johnny just did, which is recreating the first spaceship as a way to complete their first mission. But while he's complaining, she is giving him one-word answers, and on top of that, she continues to pack him a lunch because she knows that sooner or later, this man will be on that spaceship with the rest of the Fantastic Four and go on that mission. And lo and behold, he does change his mind, especially when he finds out that Herbie, their robot, has taken his place to be their pilot. And he's kind of like, there is no way I am going to let a robot replace me to be their pilot on this mission. I'm their best pilot. And so he goes out there, he goes into the lab, he gets a space suit, and then you have Alicia Masters hand him his lunch because again, she knew that her husband would be on this mission sooner or later. And when he gets on there, they're kind of like, dude, we totally knew you were coming. Matter of fact, the chair right there was built for you because how big you are. But either way, you do have the Fantastic Four leave on their first mission once again as a way to finally complete it. But this will begin the huge retcon for Dan Slott. Now, when we dive into the second chapter of this book, we are actually introduced to a brand new superhero team known as the Unparalleled, and they live on a planet known as Skye. Now, we are going to learn a lot more about them as we go through this book, but then we are introduced to their leader, who is known as the Overseer, and we are going to learn a whole lot more about him as we go through this book. But while he's about to do one of their many rituals, well, that is when he sensed danger all over his planet, and so then he summons the Unparalleled. Now, the next few pages is really Dan Slott giving us the chance to learn more about these characters by showing off their powers. Now, I could honestly sit down here and go over every single one of these characters, but in reality, only like 2 to 3 characters are really important for this storyline. And so I'm not going to sit down and explain every single one of these characters' powers, but the ones that do matter, I'll explain as we go through this book. But for right now, it's Dan Slott showing us that this team is huge. They're really big, and they're big enough to handle multiple problems across the world by different groups. So groups of 2, groups of 3, no matter what, there's so many of them, they can handle all the problems across the planet. But once they're able to handle all the problems, you do have the Overseer call them all back to their main base. Now, when the Unparallels get back to their base, that is when a special alarm go off. Now, this alarm was made by the Overseer, and the reason why, because he foresaw a day where 4 people would come to their planet and ruin what the planet has, which is a perfect society. Because when it comes to the planet Spire, they believe they have a perfect society. Even though they still have people who go out there and commit crime, they still believe they have a perfect society. And so when it came to the Overseer, he apparently foresaw a day where 4 people would come to their planet and ruin that perfect society. And so right now, you actually have the Unparallels go out there to fight against the people who is on that spaceship. Now, we already know who is on that spaceship. It is the Fantastic Four. And so apparently, when it came to the Overseer, what he foresaw was the Fantastic Four coming here to their planet and actually destroying their perfect society. But this begins a new problem, which is that there is a language barrier. Because with Spire being a completely different planet, they don't speak English, which means the Fantastic Four can't understand what they're saying to them and vice versa. And with the Unparalleled attacking the spaceship the Fantastic Four are using, to the minds of the Fantastic Four, they're being attacked. And so they begin to fight back against the Unparalleled. Now, this is a way for us to focus on one of the members of the Unparallels, and that person is Skye. Because Skye, who has like angel wings, wants to fight against Johnny Storm for apparently a special reason. And we are going to learn that reason here in a minute. But this leads into a big battle between the Fantastic Four and the Unparalleled. But while they're fighting against each other, I do want to mention this right here. The Fantastic Four do not stand a chance. There is only 4 of them. But when it comes to the Unparallels, there's like 7, 8, 9 of them. And so, of course, the Fantastic Four are being overpowered. On top of that, apparently the Overseer, who foresaw this day to come, he knew what each power the Fantastic Four had. And so, of course, he knew how to take out each and every single one of them. So Johnny, bam, taken out just like that. Then Grimm the Thing, he gets sent flying into some kind of deep hole. And that leaves Sue and Reed by themselves. And Sue and Reed, of course, are now about to become hostages for the Unparalleled. Now, Reed was able to use his translator as a way to break that language barrier so that he'll be able to communicate with the Unparallels. And he does ask them, can you please take me to your leader? Which of course the Unparallels are going to do. Now, Skye is not going to take Johnny there. Instead, she's going to take him somewhere else, because apparently him and her are going to have a very, very special conversation. Now, you do have Reed and Sue actually being able to meet the Overseer. Now, I do want to mention, when it comes to the Overseer, he does have the ability to see things all over the planet with his powers. But of course, he does tell Reed and Sue that Johnny and Ben are okay. But of course, you do have Reed and Sue wanting to go back home. But that is when you have the Overseer say, you're not going back home. You're going to stay here in our perfect society. Now, picking up with Ben, we actually saw him earlier fall into a big pit. And with him falling into that pit, apparently he arrived in Freak Alley. And the reason why it's called Freak Alley is because that is the moment he is attacked by a bunch of freakly looking monsters. Now, we do pick up with Johnny Storm, and the last time we saw him, he was being carried away by Skye unconscious. Well, when when he wakes up, he's in her bed naked and wearing an armband, and he is confused why. But that is when you have Skye actually tell Johnny Storm that on their planet, when you wear an armband that is similar to someone else, that means you two are soulmates. And that is the moment she tells Johnny that apparently her and him are soulmates. Now, getting back over to Ben Grimm, we actually see him right now still fighting against those freaks in Freak Alley. But while fighting against them, that is when he learns that they blame him for the way they look, the way they have become, because apparently it is his fault they became like monsters. And he's kind of wondering, how in the world is this my fault that you guys became monsters in the first place? Now, getting back over to Johnny and Skye, where Johnny just found out that apparently he's supposed to be Skye's new soulmate, you have Skye think it'll be a good idea to show Johnny around the place. Now, she does show him that her home is technically just one part of the building, because this whole building belongs to the Unparallels. Now, when they get outside, that is when Johnny is confronted by Citadel. Now, Citadel was supposed to be Skye's soulmate, but something changed at the very last minute that made Johnny Storm become Skye's soulmate instead. But either way, while they're walking around, that is when a message is played by the Overseer, and he's with Reed and Sue, and it's Reed and Sue telling the rest of the world that they came to their planet as a way of friendship, not a way to begin a war, trying to keep that peace between both sides. Now, getting back over to Reed and Sue, who are still with the Overseer and some members of the Unparalleled, you do have Sue ask the Overseer, what are they? If they're not prisoners, then why in the world can they not leave? What does he plan to do to them? On top of that, you have Reed realize that thanks to the radiation in the room, it had blocked the ability for Reed and Sue to send messages to Ben and Johnny through their Fantastic Four transmitter. And so right now, you have Reed and Sue wondering what in the world is going on. What does the Overseer plan to do with them? And also, is Johnny and Ben okay? But we actually go back to Ben Grimm, who's still fighting against those freak monsters in Freak Alley. But while fighting against them, apparently their leader is getting ready to fight against Ben Grimm. And this leader is going to be very important for the story later on as well. Now, getting back over to Skye and Johnny Storm, we actually see Skye explain to Johnny Storm how in the world they are perfect soulmates. And she say that on their planet, they have a telescope that has the ability to scan every single person on the planet's radiation level. And when the telescope does that, it determines who is a perfect match for you. Except when it came to Skye, no one on that planet was a perfect match for her. Instead, the telescope showed her Johnny Storm, planets away, and it told her that this man right here is your perfect soulmate. Now, this is where Dan Slott begins his huge retcon. And the reason why I say that is because you had the Overseer say when Reed was looking for a different planet to travel to, the first one he found was the planet Spire. Now, when Reed found the planet, him and the rest of the Fantastic Four tried to travel there, but of course in their first spaceship they were hit with cosmic rays sent back down to Earth, and they became the Fantastic Four. But when Reed was able to locate the planet Spire, of course a bunch of alarms told the Overseer that they had been found in the universe, and he began to freak out. And the reason why he began to freak out, because in his mind, if anyone or anything come to their planet, it could ruin their perfect society. And so with him thinking about how Reed was able to locate them, he began to watch over the Fantastic Four. But when he did that, he watched them gain powers. And when they got powers, he began to freak out even more. And the reason why, because on their planet, no one really had powers at all to protect them. And so that began the process of giving people powers as a way to fight against the Fantastic Four to protect their perfect society. Now, What he used was the same cosmic rays that made the Fantastic Four. He began to use the cosmic rays on different people to give them different abilities. Most people, it worked on them, except for some, of course, it did not. And we learned they were turned into monsters. But then we jump over to Ben Grimm, who's right now fighting against the leader of the Freaks in Freak Alley, which is King Scrum. But King Scrum tells us that him and the rest of the Freaks, they were part of the same project as a way to protect their planet from the Fantastic Four. The problem was when they came out of their testing tube, they looked like monsters. And since this planet is so big on having a perfect society, monsters were not part of the plan. And so they were sent down here to the bottom of the world. Of course, Freak Alley. And so that is why they blame Ben Grimm, because when the Overseer saw Ben Grimm, he began the process, and some people in the process were turned into monsters and thrown away from their family and friends into Freak Alley. Now, this is where we learn a whole lot more about Skye. And the reason why I say that is because you actually have Skye come to Johnny Storm and tell him that after she learned that he was supposed to be her soulmate, the problem was he was still part of the Fantastic Four. And with him being part of the Fantastic Four, of course, the planet Spire was scared of them. But of course, when it came to Skye, she was afraid of losing her soulmate. And so she began to work really, really hard as a way to prove to the Overseer that she should be one of the Unparallels, which she did become. And now her next goal is to convince Johnny to stay here with her and be another member of the Unparalleled so that they can be together as soulmates. Now you do have Reed and Sue realize that the Overseer is hiding more information that he is not telling Reed about. And so you do have Reed and Sue realize they need to leave if they want to figure out what in the world the Overseer is actually hiding from them. And so you do have Reed and Sue break away from the Overseer and the Unparallels, and hopefully they can learn what in the world the Overseer is hiding from them. Now we actually do jump over to Ben Grimm, and Ben Grimm was able to defeat King Scrum, but after he did that, he does begin a speech as a way to kind of tell the Freaks that he understands what they're going through, because he says, listen, I know what you feel like. When you were turned into monsters, people turned their backs on you, and that hurts so much because the way you look, they began to judge you. But honestly, I felt the same way too until I met Alicia Masters, my wife, and she began to look at me in a different way. She didn't judge me on the way I looked. She judged me on the person I am. And he tells them there could be people out there who is going to love you no matter the way you look, but who you are on the inside. But getting back over to Reed and Sue, we do see Reed and Sue trying to get away from the Unparallels. But while trying to get away, you do have Reed realize that they need to call in the rest of the Fantastic Four. And so you do have Sue being able to use her powers as a way to capture some of the Unparalleled powers to create a force symbol in the sky. And with that force symbol being in the sky, it will tell the rest of the Fantastic Four, we need help now. Come together to help us out. And so right when Johnny and Skye are about to kiss one another because Johnny is down with being Skye's soulmate, that is when he sees a 4 in the sky. And that tells him that his sister and brother-in-law need his help. And so he leaves Skye behind in a heartbeat. But to make things even worse, you actually have Ben Grimm tell the monsters that there's no way they should be stuck down here in Freak Alley. And so he rallies them up to go back to the surface and demand to have rights just like the rest of the people on the planet Spire. And so things are about to get a whole lot crazier on the planet Spire. Now, getting into the next chapter, we actually get a flashback to the point where we actually see when the Overseer learned about the Fantastic Four. Of course, he called in his council to talk about this moment, where they are wondering what in the world they can do to stop the Fantastic Four from coming here. If they do come, what can they do to stop them? But we do learn that the only reason why they found out about the Fantastic Four was because Skye found Johnny Storm as her soulmate. And since they hate the idea of someone else coming to their planet and ruining their society, of course, it made the Overseer scared. Now remember, we just learned about the idea that the Overseer was worried about the Fantastic Four coming to their planet. So he began to use the cosmic rays to give people powers. But because there is no way to know what will happen to each person once they go through the cosmic rays, some people became monsters, especially one of the members of the council. He became a monster. When he did, he became King Scrum, and his wife made sure that their daughter did not see him, but of course, that was the last time he saw his daughter. Now remember, back in the present day, we saw Ben Grimm being able to convince the monsters in Freak Alley to come out of their alley and claim what they deserve, which is to have the right to live with the regular looking people. So you do have them coming out, and the Overseer does see them coming. But of course, they are not going to stop until they get what they want. But getting back to some of the members of the Unparalleled, we actually see them looking for Reed and Sue since they did escape. Except of course, Sue was able to make themselves go invisible where they can't be seen. But Reed is determined to prove that the Overseer is hiding something else, and he wants the whole world to know what he is hiding. Getting back over to Skye and Johnny, we see them heading to where they saw the Fantastic Four symbol. Now Johnny knows his team is in trouble, but for Skye, she is really just tagging along. Now Skye is knocked out by Reed when the two of them are flying back. Of course, that is the moment you have Johnny explain the whole soulmate thing, which brings in another problem. Johnny doesn't know if he wants to continue to help Reed and Sue get to a certain building because he had already gained feelings for Skye and doesn't know who to choose. His family are to choose the woman he actually just met and now cares for. Now, Skye is called away by the Overseer because the monsters are attacking the city, and they need all of the heroes they have to stop that. Skye is wondering what Johnny is going to do. Is he going to help her, or is he going to follow his sister and his brother-in-law? So now Johnny has to make a choice here, and of course, this is tough for him to make. But we do see a battle happening in the middle of the city, the monsters fighting against the Unparalleled. Now, while this fight is going on, we actually see that King Scrum is named by a different name. Crimson. Remember, Crimson was one of the members of the Overseer Council before the Cosmic Rays Project. But when he went through the Cosmic Ray Project, he became King Scrum. The reason why I'm bringing this up now is because one of the Unparalleled hears it, telling you that she is the daughter of King Scrum, but she does not remember her father being a monster because her mom made her look a different way. Picking back up with Reed and Sue, we do see them arrive at a certain building. So you have Sue and Reed being able to get rid of the Unparalleled who were blocking the place. But the reason why Reed and Sue came here is because the radiation is also playing with the minds of the people to make them become angrier or any kinds of moves the Overseer sees fit for his plans. There is still that information that is not being told, but soon it will be told very soon. But getting back to the big battle between the monsters and the rest of the Unparalleled, we actually see the battle getting intense, but of course Johnny Storm had joined the side of the Unparalleled because of Skye. But of course, this is the same moment you have Johnny run into Ben and wondering which side each one of them is on, because it seems like to each that the other person is on the wrong side. But that is when you have the Overseer appear and ask Skye to finally make things right, since this is her fault the Fantastic Four is even here in the first place, since the Great Telescope told her that Johnny Storm was her soulmate. But to Skye, she did not do anything wrong for finding her one true love. But that is the moment you actually have Reed and Sue appear and claiming that the Overseer was the one who actually created the Fantastic Four. So when we dive into the 5th chapter, we actually learn that what Reed is saying is true about how the Overseer is the reason the Fantastic Four actually exist. Because when Skye found Johnny Storm thanks to the Great Telescope as her soulmate, the Overseer thought it would be a good idea to actually look and watch the Earth. Because remember, the planet Spire was scared of the idea of something or someone from a different planet destroying their perfect society. But when he saw the Fantastic Four was going to use their spaceship to come to Spire, he actually forced the cosmic rays, hoping to kill them when they first tried space travel. But of course, it did not work and turned them into the Fantastic Four. Now, of course, this begins an uproar because now you have people wondering if they should be upset with the Overseer or actually forgive him and still work for him at this moment. This makes everyone go crazy. And now this could lead to more problems like, what are people going to do with the information they just learned about? Matter of fact, you have to point out to Reed that with him telling everyone about this is only going to lead to more problems, especially for one person, and that person is Ben Grimm, because now he knows it is thanks to the Overseer for the way he looks, and he could possibly kill the Overseer for the information that he just learned. Of course, that is exactly what Ben Grimm is doing, because thanks to the Overseer, Ben Grimm's life was completely changed. On top of that, he had blamed Reed for everything over the years for what had happened to them. So yeah, to Ben, he has all the rights to kill this man for everything that has gone wrong into his life. Now, of course, King Scrum and the rest of the freaks from the Freak Alley have the right to be angry as well, because thanks to the Overseer, he ruined their lives as well. And that is not fair at all. So of course, we now have two characters who could kill the Overseer for everything the Overseer has done to them. But when Ben and King Scrum get there to kill him, well, that is the moment we see that the Overseer has battle armor ready to use to fight against anyone. But here comes the big problem though. With the battle between Ben Grimm and the Overseer, it did lead to the building taking a lot of damage. And with the battle happening outside as well, of course, the building took even more damage. And so that begins the process of the whole building just coming down. But because this building was so tall and so big, with it coming down, it could cause a lot of damage to the city. And so you have the monsters, the Fantastic Four, and the Unparallels actually work together as a way to save all of the innocent lives, but at the same time to make sure that this tall building does not do too much damage to the city. But once everything is done, the big question is, where is the Overseer? And of course, the Overseer was buried deep down in the rubble from the building, and he is barely okay. But now, with everything calmed down, you have the Unparallels once again blame the Fantastic Four for everything happening on their planet. Because again, the Overseer told the world that he foresaw 4 people coming to their planet and making everything worse for their planet. Well, here we are. As soon as the Fantastic Four had arrived, everything had began to fall apart for this planet. And so it seems like we could have another battle between both sides. But when we jump into the next chapter, we actually jump back to Earth and we jump back over to Oklahoma. And the reason why, because right now there is an argument going on between two sides, the government and a Native American group, because right now the Native Americans are upset with the government because the government is trying to dig on their sacred grounds. And so of course you do have the Native Americans upset with what is happening with this deal. Now you do have Wyatt Wingfoot appear, and Wyatt Wingfoot is an old friend of Johnny Storm and a close ally of the Fantastic Four. But either way, you do have Wyatt come here because because he's actually part of this Native American group, and he is hoping that he'll be able to bring some kind of peace between the both sides. Unfortunately, right when they're trying to make this truce between the two sides, well, that is when the ground opens up and a bunch of eyes are seen in the ground, and they begin to come out, and we have no idea what kind of creatures were hiding in the ground just yet. Now we do jump back over to the planet Spire, where we pick up with Reed and the Overseer having an argument because each person is blaming the other person for what had happened in their lives. Because to Reed, he said, thanks to you, Overseer, you had created the Fantastic Four, but you turned my best friend into a rock monster. He hated me and I hated myself for years. My wife went through 2 difficult pregnancies because we were affected by the cosmic rays thanks to you. It is all your fault. Now for the Overseer, he blames Reed for Reed looking into space and finding a planet, but not thinking that maybe that other planet could be scared of outside people coming to their world. And so he said, I had to do what I had to do to protect my people because I had no idea who you were. I didn't know you were good or bad. Now, honestly, I feel like Reed is still correct here and Overseer is still wrong because Overseer had watched Reed became Mr. Fantastic and watched the Fantastic Four on their adventures. So he should have known by now, hey, he's a good guy, it's okay. But of course, in reality, he's still kind of like, no, I did nothing wrong. Either way, you do have both men realize they could work together to make things better for everyone around them. And so we actually have a peaceful moment here. Honestly, these guys only do one thing together, which is recreate the same serum that turns Ben Grimm into a regular person once a year. And we learned about that in our last video, that once a year, Ben Grimm can turn back into a regular person thanks to a serum that Reed had made for him. And so you have Reed share that serum with the planet Spire so that the monsters can turn back into regular people once a year. That is it. That's the only thing Reed and the Overseer do together, and we actually move on. Now you do have Reed and Johnny being able to make another spaceship so that they can go back home to Earth. But right before the Fantastic Four are about to leave, well, that is the moment you have Skye appear. And you have Skye asking the Fantastic Four, can she come with them? Because she wants to make sure that her and Johnny are actually soulmates. And so with that being said, Skye is actually going to leave her planet and go back home to Earth. And the Fantastic Four are kind of like, fine, I guess you can. And so Skye is going to go with Johnny just to make sure that they are actually soulmates for one another. But getting back over to Wyatt Wingfoot, we see him hanging out with the Native American group after keeping peace, but after that small earthquake has shown monsters. Well, we come to find out those monsters were actually a small group known as Moloids. Usually Moloids hang out underground and they belong to a man known as the Mole Man. Mole Man is a classic Fantastic Four villain. But either way, apparently this small group of Moloids had joined the Native American group. But the Mole Man sent a message showing he is not happy about that. And he's saying he's going to attack the area to get the Moloids back. Now we do jump over to Fantastic Four number 20, where we actually pick up with the Fantastic Four arriving back home from the planet Spire. Now when they do, they are greeted by Franklin and Val Richards, the kids of Reed and Sue Richard. Now you do have Reed realize that his kids had thrown a lot of parties while the Fantastic Four were gone. And so of course the kids are in trouble. But that is the moment you actually have Johnny tell the kids like, hey, listen, you actually have a new aunt. This aunt right here, her name is Skye, and Skye is my soulmate. And of course the kids are kind of like, again, like you found love once again in some kind of weird way. Dude, how many times can this happen to you? But this also begins the moment where we actually see Johnny kind of scared to commit to be with somebody. Because as soon as the rest of the Fantastic Four leave, Johnny just walks away. He's kind of like, honestly, I need to go take care of some things. You can just stay here. He's scared to spend some time with his brand new wife. Now, after that, you do have Johnny go into his room. And when he does, of course, he does have a missed call from Wyatt. And so he does play back the message that Wyatt left. And of course, it's Wyatt asking the help of the Fantastic Four down in Arizona. And so you have Johnny say, okay, maybe I should go down and see what my best friend might need help with. Now, while Johnny is trying to leave, you actually have Sue make Johnny take Skye with him so that this new soulmate bond can actually work out, so that the two of them can learn more about each other. And so Skye does leave with Johnny on this new mission with Johnny. Now, we actually do see Johnny and Skye arrive in Arizona. Now, when they do, of course, they do meet up with Wyatt, and Wyatt does catch up Johnny on everything that is going on in Arizona. How apparently, when it came to the government coming into the area, they dug a hole in the ground and the Native Americans found a group of Moloids. But those Moloids had actually joined the Native American group. And now they're part of that group, but the Mole Man wants his Moloids back. And so he is going to attack the area to get what he wants. And so now Johnny, Skye, and Wyatt must work together to actually fight against the Mole Man when he comes in one more day. Now, the Mole Man does arrive, and when he does arrive, of course, we do get a big battle between the Mole Man and the side of the Human Torch. But this battle doesn't actually last that long. And the reason why, because Skye saves the day. Because Skye also has the ability to talk to birds. And apparently, T-Rex have a close tie to birds. And so with them having a close tie to birds, Skye was able to talk to the T-Rex and actually have the T-Rex turn against its master, which is the Mole Man. And so with the T-Rex now being on the side of good and the Mole Man being defeated, the day is actually saved. And that is how Skye and the Human Torch defeat the Mole Man. Now, you do have Johnny and Skye arrive back home to the rest of the Fantastic Four, and they come to find out that the Fantastic Four are giving Skye a welcoming party. Now, you do have Skye say that she is going to stay somewhere else in the city as the way to make sure that her and Johnny can take it slow to work things out. The problem is, though, she has no idea how money works. But luckily for her, Alicia Masters still has the key to her old apartment. And so you have Alicia hand the key over to Skye as a way to give her a new home for the time being. Now, you do have Reed and Ben finally talk. And the reason why, because remember, Ben had been blaming Reed for years on the way he looks. Because it's Reed's fault that they went through the cosmic rays and Ben Grimm turned into the Thing. But they came to find out Reed was innocent. It wasn't his fault. It was the Overseer. And so you have these two kind of make amends with one another. But of course, you didn't have Reed make a promise to himself that from here on out, he is going to make sure that he can protect his family. He wants to make sure that nothing ever happens to them ever again. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please hit the like button down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video.